العلم أشراف مطلوب وطالبه لله أكرام من يمشي على قدم. العلم نور مبين يستضيء به أهل السعادات والجهال في الظلم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين أما بعد. Abdillah, please tell her to turn it off. طيب. So last week we finished Kitab al-Tahara and we finished the last bab, which was Bab al-Hayd. طيب. I'm going to do a khulasa of Bab al-Hayd, the most important masail that we came across. And also the questions that are still here, we're going to go through them inshallah. So for about the first 40 minutes of the class, we're going to finish off any questions and any questions that you may have after obviously revising the last lesson. And then we'll move over to Kitab al-Salah inshallah. So Khulas to Bab al-Hayd, a summary of some of the ahkam. A summary of some of the ahkam. Now these ahkam are in the book. If you want to write them, you can write them down. If not, you will find them in the book. The first mas'ala is al-haydu la yuhaddu bis-sinnin mu'ayyanin wala la bi-aqallihi wala bi-aktharihi. فالعبرة بوجود الدم. فالعبرة بوجود الدم. So hayd, when it comes to when it comes to the woman's age, the earliest possible age that it can come to the woman or the woman can experience it, and the latest possible age that the woman can experience it, there's no had, there's no limit. Meaning if a young girl experiences hayd at the age of 8, then it's considered as hayd. And if a woman reaches the age of 51, 52 and she sees hayd, then that is considered hayd. لا بأقله ولا بأكثره. Also when it comes to hayd itself, how long the hayd is, whether it's 5 days or 6 days or 7 days or 15 days, there are some of the scholars that are upon the fact that there is no limit to it. Whether how the minimum amount of duration for the hayd or the maximum duration for the hayd. In the kitab we studied that it is a day, the minimum is yawm wa layla, and the maximum is what? 15 days. The maximum is 15 days. And that is very beneficial to limit it to a certain day, because if we say, especially with regards to the maximum number of days, if we say 15 days, then later on we're able to differentiate between hayd and istihada. Should a woman experience istihada, irregular or abnormal bleeding, then we've now got a cut-off point. And if we say that there is no limit, then the cut-off point would obviously be about day 7 or day 8 or day 9, depending on how often a woman would get. So the qa'idah is فَالْعِبْرَةُ بِوُجُودِ الدَّمِ. That is the qa'idah or the tabid. Rather, the tabid. فَالْعِبْرَةُ بِوُجُودِ الدَّمِ. What is taken into consideration and what the hukum goes around with is the presence of blood. The second mas'ala, الحائض لا تصلي ولا تصوم ولا تطوف لكنها تقضي الصيام. طيب. The second mas'ala is the woman who is menstruating, she doesn't pray and she doesn't fast and she doesn't do tawaf. And there are other masail that we studied in Kitab al-Tahara in the earlier chapters. The issue to do with the mushaf, the issue to do with reading the Quran and so on, and remaining in the masjid, attending masjid for classes and so on. وَلَا تَطُوفْ. Lakin when it comes to fasting, she obviously has to make it up. Aisha radiallahu anha says we were commanded during the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to make up the fasting. We weren't commanded to make up the prayers. And that is obviously due to how easy it is to make up 5 or 6 or 7 days. Lakin for salah, then that is, you're talking maybe 35 to 40 prayers plus. The third mas'ala, يَحْرُمُ وَطْءُ الْحَائِدِ وَيَجُوزُ الْإِسْتِمْتَاعُ بِهَا دُونَ الْفَرْجِ. It is impermissible to have intercourse. When it comes to intimacy, it is impermissible to have intercourse with a woman that is experiencing hayd. A woman that is experiencing her menses during that time of the month. Not istihada, not the irregular bleeding. Lakin dam wada, mada, damul hayd. Also what is similar to that in ruling is what? Dam nifas. Dam nifas. Because damul nifas, post birth bleeding, and damul hayd, they have the same ahkam. They have the same ahkam. لكن it is permissible ما دون الفرج. Anything else other than the private part, other than intercourse, then everything else, other sort type of foreplay or intimacy is permissible. The fourth مسألة إذا انقطع الدم ولم تغتسل لا يباح غير الصيام والطلاق. If a woman, if the blood stops and she sees that she's completely dahir from any blood and she has not had a bath yet, she hasn't had a ghusl yet, the only two things that are permissible for her is number one, fasting, siyam, and at-talaq. As-siyam making it equivalent to the junub, because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Aisha radiallahu anha, mentions that he would wake up junub. The time of salah would come in, the fasting would come in, and he would wake up, or the time of fajr would come in and he would be junub. طيب. And obviously the haid is exactly the same, so she fasts. So مثلا if a woman, if her haid ends just before fajr, then she has to fast that day, even if she hasn't had a ghusl yet. The second is for at-talaq. Because that is one of the times where it is permissible, rather it is a sunnah to do talaq. In those two situations, when a woman's haid ends and the man hasn't had intercourse with her, or when she is pregnant. طيب. The al-khamisa, we studied the mas'ala called al-mubtada'a. And al-mubtada'a is the woman who experiences her blood for the first time. وهي التي رأت الدم لأول المرة. And it is the woman that sees blood, يعني the 13-year-old, 12-year-old, 8-year-old, depending on what age the woman gets her haid. طيب. And the hukum for her is وتجلس ما رأت الدم ولا تنتظر مدة معينة. That is the qa'idah, which is that she refrains from salah and fasting ما رأت الدم, يعني for as long as she sees the blood. When she sees the blood, she stops praying and fasting. Once she no longer sees the blood and she's free from blood, whether it's due to dryness or seeing the other alama or the other sign of the haid ending, which is a white secretion that comes out after haid, as long as the blood stops and she's free from haid, that's when she starts her ibadah and so on and so forth. Then for the second month, that's exactly what she does. She doesn't need to use the method that is mentioned in the book. As you all know, the method in the book was that she waits 3 months, and we will only know her normal menstrual cycle on the what? 4th month. Lakin the stronger opinion, wallahu a'lam, is that she only has to wait 1 month. That month, because the qa'idah is what fil ibra to be wujud ad-dam. The qa'idah.
Can we get more chairs, please, for the brothers?
The qa'idah depends, or the ruling goes around with the presence of blood, as the qa'idah says, al-hukmu yaduru ma'illati wujudan wa adama. طيب. So that is the mubtada'a. والمستحاضة, as for the mustahada, it is هي التي جاوز دمها أكثر الحيض. Mustahada is the woman or the blood. So blood, عفوا. Before this, the blood that a woman can see is 4. 1 of 4 dima. Al-hayd, al-nifas, al-hayd, the normal monthly cycle. Hayd, or normal monthly menses. Nifas, that comes with giving birth. Istihada, irregular bleeding. And that is a sign of illness. And the 4th is something called damu fasad, which is blood that doesn't take any of the rulings of any of these things. It is just blood, kind of like a temporary quick illness that is just that comes out of the private parts. It has no ruling. So mathalan, if she sees that sort of blood, aladun makes wudu and prays. It is not connected to not praying or not fasting. So the mustahada is the one whose blood exceeds the normal amount. Mathalan, let's say a woman's blood is normally, her haid is normally for 7 days. Here she is on the 8th day, 9th day, 10th day, still getting haid. That is considered what? Damul istihada. Like if we say the 15th day is the limit, the maximum number of haid, then that means anything beyond 15 will be what? Will be istihada. And that is why I was saying it is extremely beneficial to give it a limit. Because haid, obviously, as you know, due to many variants, many different reasons, it can be longer than the normal monthly haid, or it can be less, a lot less. For example, depending on iron levels, depending on stress, depending on weather, depending on these sorts of things, Haid can slightly last for a day over or a day or two over. Like if we say 15 days, then anything after the 16th day and so on is definitely what? Or 17th day is definitely istihada. Right. With regards to the next mas'ala, which is number 7, what is the difference between haid and istihada? This is extremely important to know. Why did I say what is the difference between dam al-haid and istihada? And not dam al-haid and nifas. Haid and nifas, there's no need to know the difference between the two. Why? Because they are the same. In terms of ruling, sahih, one of them is obviously 40 days maximum, and the other is only 8 days. Like in terms of hukum, ruling, they are the same. Likewise, there's no need to say the difference between damul nifas and damul istihada, because haid and nifas, they're the same. Sah? Right. So the difference between damul haid and damul istihada are in a few things. Number 1, the actual traits of the blood. Damul haid is dark, thick, and it has a foul smell. Dam al-istihada is the complete opposite. It is clear red, it doesn't have, it's thin, and it doesn't have what? A smell. That is with regards to the traits of the blood. In terms of ahkam and rulings, then the woman that is going through haid, she can't pray, fast, have intimate intercourse with her husband. As for the woman that has damul istihada, abnormal, irregular bleeding, she must pray, must fast, and what? And intercourse is also permissible for her. It is not disliked as is mentioned in the book. That is what we studied in the book. So in terms of these 3, they are different. Also the mustahada, she makes wudu for every salah. She makes wudu for every salah. And that is if she sees blood. If she has broken her wudu. طيب. Then the Shaykh rahimahullah mentioned mustahada, or the rulings of the mustahada. So he mentioned mustahada is of 2 types. Who remembers what 2 types? From the get-go, the overall, not individually. Without go a level above. Before that, mubtada'a and mustahada mu'tada. The mubtada'a is the woman who sees blood for the very first time and it just carries on. It just flows. It doesn't have a limit. For example, after 6 days it doesn't stop. Nor does it stop after 7 days. It carries on for about 15, 20 days and so on. طيب. For that one, the Shaykh said rahimahullah, what? She goes to try and differentiate between the different blood. The blood that resembles the blood of the haid, those 7 days or 8 days, that is haid. Anything after that is called what? Istihada. If she cannot differentiate, then what does she do? She asks her family members, her mother, sisters, her siblings and so on, and then sits the number of days that they normally sit haid. That is with regards to the mubtada'a. The next is with regards to the what? The mustahada al-mu'tada. And that is of 3 types. Mustahada, the woman, al-mu'tada is the woman who's been seeing haid for the last 5, 6, 7, 20 years. Right? And then all of a sudden she starts to get irregular bleeding. واضح? طيب. With regards to that irregular bleeding, it's one of 3 situations. Either she has a 'ada, so she knows her 'ada. مثلا, she says, my 'ada is 7 days at the beginning of the month, from day 1 to day 7. That is my 'ada. To her, for this woman, who's seen the blood for about 20 plus days, but she knows the number of days she used to have her haid, what do we say to her? Sit your haid. Leave out ibadah for your normal number of days. مثلا, she says to us, I used to get 7 days haid, and it used to be on the 1st to the 7th of every month. What do we say to her? طيب, on the 1st to the 7th of every month, refrain from ibadah. Then after the 7th day, on the 8th day, make ghusl and so on. طيب. That is the 'ada. لأن the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he commanded the female companion to go back to تحيضي أيام قرئك أو أيام حيدك كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم. 6 أو 7. لا نعم 6 أو 7. And that's with regards to the غالب. طيب. The second scenario is المستحاضة المميزة. She doesn't know her number of days that she used to have, but she's able to differentiate the blood. She doesn't remember her 'ada. Maybe she's forgotten, or she doesn't remember the exact number of days, and so on and so forth, whatever. whatever it may be, whatever the reason, she is a mumayyiza, meaning she can differentiate between the blood that is menses and the blood that is hayd, istihada. What does she do? The days that she sees blood of hayd, for example, let's say for the first 8 days or first 6 days, she sees dark blood which has this smell and so on, thick, then that is considered her what? Her hayd. And then after that, on the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th day, she sees normal blood that hasn't got any of these traits. Adi. From that point onwards, she starts to pray. Wadih? The third one is what? Al-mutahayyira. Wal-muhayyira li-ghayriha. She is the one that doesn't have a clue. She says, I don't know how many days my hayd was, I don't know what part of the month it was, and these traits that you, tudandin hawlaha, these traits that you mention, Allahu a'lam. Tayyib, we say to her, ask those women around you, and then whatever number of days they tell you their hayd is, then sit those number of days. So she says 6 or 7. Or if they say to her 8, then khalas, 8. If they say to her 5, then what? Then 5. If a few say 5 and the majority say 7, then khalas, let her consider it as 7. Number 10, الطهر من الحيض له علامتان. الطهر, how do we know a woman has ended her hayd? There are 2 signs to knowing whether the hayd has ended or not. Number 1, أن ترى القصة البيضاء, that she sees white secretion that comes out when the blood has stopped. And that is often on the last day of her hayd, on the 7th day and so on. Right? Once she sees that, then she has the ghusl and then she carries on praying and doing her ibadat as normal. The second sign, الجفاف التام لأنه ينقطع الدم, a complete dryness. So there's no sign of any blood. Lakin that is towards the end of her hayd. Because be careful not to say at the beginning. Mathalan, let's say she gets her hayd on the Monday and she normally experiences it for 7 days. Monday comes and then Tuesday she sees no blood. She can't say I'm going to have a ghusl now because there's no blood. La. She has to wait until at least 6 or 7 days. Why? Because it's normal, like the last mas'ala, or one of the last masail that we took, it is normal for her to see blood and for her to see dryness during those 7-8 days. Wadih? Okay? طيب. Number 11, لا حد لأقل النفاس ولا لأكثره لكن غالبه 40 يوما. There is no limit to the number of days the hayd can be, meaning the minimal, because a woman can give birth and no blood, see no blood. طيب. وأكثره غالبا, لكن they say that the akthar, the majority is what? 40 days. That is what many of the female companions were upon during the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that is normally the maximum amount of time. طيب. Lakin if it ends after 30 days or 20 days or 25 days, then khalas, she has her ghusl, and then from there onwards she's tahir, she prays and does her other ibadat. واضح? طيب. What about if she has a C-section? What would you say? Huh? She still waits 40 days? طيب. If there's the qa'idah of whenever you see them, then you apply it. طيب. Anyone else? طيب. نعم. الحكم يدور مع العلة. The ruling goes around with the ruling. The ruling goes around with the illah. The ruling goes around with the illah. If she has a cesarean and then sees blood from the private parts, khalas, that is called nifas. If she sees the blood, Allahu a'lam, if they see blood, maybe the sisters can help us on this. Allahu a'lam, if women see blood when there is a C-charge, when there is cesarean, Allahu a'lam. Maybe if any of the sisters know, that they can write a letter in, a note in. Lakin, for argument's sake, if they see blood coming out from the private part, although she's had a cesarean birth, then what? She has to consider that as what? As nifas. Why do we say that? We have the qa'idah. The qa'idah is what? الحكم يدور مع العلة والعلة وجود الدم. The illah is وجود الدم, the presence of them. So مثلا now you as a faqih, you don't know. You've never had a cesarean and so on and so forth. You'll never have it, inshallah. I don't know why I keep adding inshallah, like you'll never have it ala ayati hal. Therefore, you don't know. Like you have a qa'idah that you studied throughout Bab al-Hayd, which is what? Al-ibratu bi-wujud al-dam. The ibra is with the presence of blood. طيب, the 12th mas'ala. What was the ta'rif of nifas? There's a very important mas'ala connected to this. What was the definition of nifas? Even in English you can say it. According to the madhab first that we studied, according to the book. Ahsant. So blood, the nifas, according to the madhab, is the blood that comes out because of giving birth, because of wilada, because of giving birth. It could be a day or 2 or 3 before actually giving birth, as long as it has contractions. Talqul wilada, as long as it has contractions, she experiences contractions. That is according to the madhab. According to the Shafi'iyya, it is الدم الذي يخرج عقب الولادة بعد wilada. That is the blood that comes out after wilada. Is there a difference in this? Like, what is the difference? Ja'far. Now, if we say that damun nifas can come out, and the ruling is connected to damun nifas, if it comes out, if she experiences it before giving birth by a day or 2, then it means she does not pray those 2 days. As for upon the qawl of the Shafi'iyya, then what? Na'am. She doesn't. Lakin, both opinions are very strong. Both opinions are very strong. Why? Because if we say damun nifas is when a woman gives birth, khalas. Right. Lakin, for those that say it could be 2 or 3 days before, as long as it has contractions, then also that blood, it only came out because of what? Not hayd, not istihad. It came out because of what? Of wilada, because of the contractions, and this is just before she gives birth. Na'am. So wallahu a'lam, for those 2 days or so, she refrains from salah, especially if the blood is a lot, and if she's finding it difficult to pray as well. If she's finding it difficult to pray, and you will find that often when the contractions are there, it is almost impossible for them to think about any or to do anything. Fine. So that is a khulasa of the bab. As for the questions, some of the questions, if there's repetition, obviously I'm going to leave out. If one sees yellow discharge towards the end of their menstruation and it doesn't stop, is this considered hayd? What would you say? This is one of the masail that was literally on the matan. It is hayd. Any sort of yellowish discharge or muddy discharge that comes out during the time of hayd is considered hayd. And any yellow discharge or your mother discharge that comes out other than the times of hayd, when she's pure from blood, then that is considered tuhur, pure. Can we use contraception for the reason of getting to know your spouse? If you're just married, you may know if he's a suitable father. As for this reason, Allahu A'lam. As for this reason that is mentioned, meaning while at the beginning of their marriage they're not sure if they're compatible and so on and so forth, so they delay having children, Allahu A'lam. Like in the general ruling of contraception is what? Is that it is permissible. With what conditions? No harm, la dar wa la dirar, and permission from the husband, because it is his right to be able to have children. Likewise, a man cannot force the wife to have contraception, to use contraception, if she doesn't want to use contraception, because it is her right. Oh, yeah. If a woman has a miscarriage and she sees flesh-like discharge coming out of her, is it accepted as nifas? Can she pray? With regards to the blood that a woman experiences when having a miscarriage, if it's anything, the fuqaha, they say anything after 81 days to about 90 days, that is when the whatever it is that comes out, if it has like the creation or the form of a human, then that could be considered nifas from that point onwards. So that is connected to whatever is coming out. If it has, or the child, or whatever has coming out, the morsel of flesh, if it has the form of a human, then that is considered damun nifas. And anything before 80 days, 60 days, or 50 days, or whatever, then that is dam and al-fasad. And if it's damun nifas, then obviously it takes the rulings of damun nifas. Why does it matter if she forgets where in the month it occurs, if she would count her ghalib, her number of normal number of days, from the start of the bleeding period anyway? Or is it because her bleeding is constant, like 2 months straight? The whole reason why we said she goes to the beginning of the month, or whatever her normal number of days, is because she's experiencing blood all the time. If she didn't have any blood constantly, then she would obviously have her normal hayd. This is a situation of istihada. It wouldn't be istihada if she had her hayd on her normal days and then ends on her normal days. Is the what? Mu'tada, is it regarding the mumayyiza? Safe, how? Yeah, Abdillah, what did she say? Jazakallah khair. Her ada. La. If that's the order that I mentioned, is the order that the fuqaha give, or the Hanabila give. First is the ada. So even if she has ada and a mumayyiza, she gives precedence to what? Precedence to the ada. Due to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where he said to her, stay away from the salah, the ayam, the days of your ada. So the Prophet returned her back to what? Her ada. Please explain the mubtada'a mustahada with examples. First month, second month, third month. The mubtada'a, the mustahada, don't worry about how it is written in the book. Like if she does it, the dama mustahada, that is the mubtada', afwan. The mubtada'a al-mustahada, if she knows the number of days, afwan, if she knows how to differentiate between the blood, then she differentiates between the damul hayd and damul istihada. Why did they initially take her to, or why did they take her to tamyiz straight away? Because she doesn't have a ada. So the first, Ismail, that's where it comes in, your question. The mubtada'a mustahada, a woman sees her hayd for the first time and it carries on for 15, 16 days, she looks into the tamyiz, the different type of blood, for her 8 or 9 days. Then after that, she considers it as istihada. Why can't we take her back to her ada? Because she doesn't have a ada. If she cannot differentiate between the blood, she goes to what? Ghalib, what is the norm for her women folk? If a woman is on her pre-menopause and her bleeding becomes irregular, i.e. her usual days were 10, then now in total she may have 10 days, but blood stops for 2 or 3 days in the middle of her haid, and does she need to pray? La. If her normal days is 10 days, and there's slight dryness on the 5th day or on the 6th day, and then the blood comes back, then that is considered her haid until she reaches the number of 10 days. However, if مثلا she gets her haid from day 1 to about day 5, normally her days are 10, as it is in the example. She gets her haid from day 1 to day 5. Day 5 onwards she sees no bleeding. She waits for a day or 2 and then she sees no bleeding and it goes away like that. Then obviously the day number 6 and 7 was her normal. She was free from any blood. Therefore she goes back and prays the number of days, prays that salah and fast those days if it was Ramadan, because she was pure and she was meant to have prayed. What is the stronger opinion about dam nifas in regards to the blood before she gives birth? Wallahi, Allahu A'lam, it depends on and both of these opinions are very strong. Both are very strong. Like if the contractions are there and she sees the blood, whether it's a day before or... Obviously she doesn't know when before is until what? She doesn't know when before is until she gives birth. She may see blood and then 5 days later still not give birth. Like if it's a day or 2 before and she's seen this blood and there's contractions there, then khalas, that is considered damun nifas. Allahu A'lam. Like in the opinion of the Shafi'i is strong. If a woman has 'ada and after she finishes her menses sees the signs of purity, she sees some spotting and this, or spots of blood obviously, and this happens most months. Is this considered, is this spotting becoming pure does it count as menstruation? No, it doesn't count as menstruation. Once her 'ada ends, once her 6 or 7 days ends, then khalas, after that if she sees any blood here and there, then that is damu fasad, meaning she carries on with her salah as normal. Does the husband need the wife's permission if he takes pills that prevent childbirth? What is the ruling, do you reckon? Huh? No? He doesn't need it? Idhin. So you're saying he does. Sahih. He does need permission if he wants to take pills that prevent childbirth. طيب, someone can say الرجال قوامون على النساء. Why do we have to get their permission? لأن الولادة من حق, having children is from her حق, صح? Is it permissible to take prevention pills for Umrah too? Is it like the same as Hajj? Is it Naam. So for that first one, Naam, it is permissible for her to take things, the blood that or afwan, it is permissible for her to take something that will prevent the haid, whether it's Umrah or Hajj, as long as number one, there's no harm, meaning there's no what? Side effects, and also as long as she's not running away from a wajib, i.e. the iddah, or she's trying to prolong the iddah. Is it haram to take birth control as it leads to haram? Is it haram to take birth control as it leads to harm in the future? If it leads to harm, it is not permissible. If it doesn't lead to harm, then it is permissible, with the other condition of the idn, the permission. With regards to haid, if you notice a continuous pattern of being on your period, but a couple of hours it's white, a couple of hours later it's white, but then a couple hours later you see period, because I'm aware of this pattern, I give myself 6 to 7 hours of white before I make ghusl. Should I be making ghusl as soon as I see it? As soon as the blood stops and that white secretion comes out, that is when you should have a bath. that is when you should have ghusl. Lakin if it is the norm that you still get hayd blood after 6 or 7 hours, then wait for those 6 or 7 hours and then have ghusl. Is it allowed to delay pregnancy due to still being in school? I think the person is using school based on the terminology of like certain countries like America, where they where they call university school, because obviously that is you wouldn't be able to picture that here. Allahu A'lam. I can't answer the question because there's ambiguity in it. With regards to making wudu when you have istihada, with regards to making wudu when you have istihada, can you make wudu before every salah, not an hour, not time of salah? Like make wudu when you're about to pray. Make wudu when you're about to pray. Does the husband refrain from the wife for 40 days unconditionally? What happens for the C-section birth, and she does not experience nifas? First and foremost, the question is worded wrong. Does the husband refrain from the wife for 40 days? The question is, what is considered as nifas? When is nifas? Because when you know what is nifas and when is nifas and when does it end, then you can determine whether the husband should stay away from her or not. If she's on nifas, he stays away from her. If she's not on nifas, then he doesn't need to stay away from her. So the 40 days is the maximum. Her nifas can end after 40 days, after 30 days, after 20 days. At which point she has a ghusl and she prays, fast, and her husband can have intercourse with her. Fadlah. If a woman, if a woman wants a child, you have to give it to her if it's not in your hands necessarily. That is based on a discussion with a husband and wife. Let them have a discussion. Let them come to terms, agree terms and conditions, and inshallah. No one's saying is more. No one's opinion matters more. They're both together. They're in it together. So he has a right to children. She has a right to children. Yes, obviously, they may differ on at that particular time. For example, she may have given birth, let's say, a month ago, and as soon as she finishes her nifas, ala tul, he wants to have another child. She may say no. She can be well within her right to say no, due to maybe harm that she experienced during pregnancy, and so on. Okay. During the C-section surgery, there's no blood that comes out of the private part. Sahih. طيب. What about after? So this is half the answer. During it, no. Yeah, naam. So the question was more so after. So, but if that's the case, that there's no blood, then khalas. There's no what? No nifas. The ibra, what is taken into consideration is blood. Fadal. How long does it? Ada is usually what she sees after the norm for 3 months. the norm for 3 months, because 1 or 2 months can vary, and there could be a reason. There could be a reason why 1 month it would be 2 days or 3 days or 5 days less. Allahu alam, due to stress, traveling, pressure, lack of iron, weather.
So the grace period is 3 months. So after 3 months,
That-
she has that consistency.
That's when she can consider that that is her normal number of days.
Then go back to the previous months where, and then do a lot of the siyam.
Qada of siyam, that question doesn't even arise. Why? Because she stops praying when she sees blood, and she starts praying when she's on tahara, whether it's 5 days or 6 days or 7 days. The aada, the benefit of the aada is only later on if she has istihada, then she goes back to what is a aada. So the aada, knowing your aada, is not connected to whether you pray or not during the haid. It is connected to later on. If or should istihada happen, what is the normal number of days of her aada?
So I know one of the previous answers mentioned, say she had normal in 6 days. 4 of the days she saw the blood, and other 2 she didn't. She wait 2 days, and then after that she considered
That is the mas'ala of a woman. She sees blood one day and she doesn't see blood one day. She sees blood one day and she doesn't see blood one day. That dryness, as we took in the madhab, that dryness is not considered, according to the madhab, is considered tahara. Lakin, we add all of those days up, whether it's dry for 1 day or not, that is still considered hayd. That's what I was referring to. If her norm is 6 days, but she sees blood on the first day, but nothing on the next, does she make ghusl? La, that is her hayd. Because just because she doesn't see blood for 1 day, it doesn't mean that her hayd has ended. طيب, like, شوف, one of the masail, you know where it says وَالصُّفْرَةُ وَالْخُدْرَةُ فِي زَمِنِ الْحَيْدِ في زمن العادة حيض, on that mas'ala, if you look, it says وَمَنْ رَأَتْ يَوْمًا دَمًا وَيَوْمًا نَقَاءً. If she sees blood on 1 day and on the next day she doesn't see blood, فَدَمُّ حَيْد, on the day that she sees blood, it is hayd. وَالنَّقَاءُ حَيْد, ظُهْرًا, and the day that she doesn't see blood, then that is a day of tahara for her. So she has ghusl and she has what? And she prays. Like in that is according to the mu'allif. The other opinion in this mas'ala is what? That during those 7 or 8 days of her normal aada, that is considered aada. Because just because she doesn't see blood on 1 day doesn't mean khalas. Because I haven't seen blood for the last 24 hours, then I'm going to make ghusl. La. Because it is still within her 7 or 8 normal days of istihada. With regards to rulings of confused mustahada, every woman's cycle changes every month, not a set date, i.e. doesn't have a set date, like the end of the month. So how can you apply the hukum if every single month is different? Sometimes due to weather change, for example, January she can get, what does she do now? If she doesn't have aada, tamyiz. The second level down is what? Tamyiz. She looks at the blood. If she's able to differentiate between the hayd blood and the demo, the istihada, and I mentioned the differences between the two, then khalas, the day that she sees hayd blood is hayd, and the days that she sees istihada blood is what? Istihada. Ustad Google says there will be vaginal bleeding after C-section. Allahu alam. If that vaginal bleeding is immediately and then it just stops, then it can't be considered hayd, like in nifas. Like if it's continuous, then it can be considered nifas. with regards to talaq, can a woman get a khula' from her husband while on haid, or does it take the same ruling as talaq? Allahu a'lam.
Regarding yellow discharge, if this goes on for 4 or 5 days after the blood stops, then this still
Has,
menses.
with regards to the yellow discharge, has her haid ended or not? If her haid has ended by seeing those two signs of haid ending, and then a few days later or 2-3 days later she sees this yellow discharge, that is not haid. If she sees this yellow discharge or muddy color during the days of her haid, when she is yet to be pure and end her haid, then that is considered what? Haid. The second opinion? Na'am, those that say there is no limit to the number of days, they would still go back to the aada, the tamyiz, and then the ghalib of what is noon.
So long with the for the rabbits, for the head, the baby head thing, you said it's 13 days. I didn't understand the extent behind it. You used the story of the judgment.
Of Ali radiallahu anhu, Shuraih.
Because you said you assumed that it was the least amount is for 1 day, the head, and the 13 days of tuhur, and that added up to 29 when you had 3 in 1 month. That's based on the presumption that 1 day was haid. If you said it was 5 days of haid, then tuhur would be 7 days. So would that be less than 13? It's 5, 7, 5.
Now, the reason why it can't be less is because she had her haid, she had 3 haids within a month. And the only way that 3 haids can come about in 1 month is if the haid, the minimal number of the day of haid was what? 1 day. So they derive it from the fact that that is the minimal number of days possible.
Okay, let's say if we didn't assume the minimum, because 5 days is more appropriate than 1 day.
Then it wouldn't be possible for her to have 3 haids. Like if we say her minimum was 5 days of haid, it wouldn't be possible to have 3 haids in 1 month. And what did Shuraih say? In order to believe her, she needs to get a witness from her family, a trustworthy person. And if they give testimony and they be witnesses that yes, she did get her haid for those 3 months, then it is considered as her haid and her iddah is over. Ali said to him, what? قالون صحيح, you're right, أحسنت. So the fact that Ali agreed with them, agreed with this Qadi Shuraih, that is where the ruling is derived from.
I think it's possible to have 3 haids or 5 days. The tuhur is 7 days between the two. Adds up to 29.
We work that another time. If the duhur is 5 days, you mean 7 days?
And
How?
5 days of haid, and another 7.
1 to 5 haid, and then 6 onwards, 7 days of duhur.
Which is 4. 5 days of haid, which is 19. 17. Then 7 days of tuhur is 24. And 5 days of haid is 29.
Possible, but like in that's we're looking for the minimum amount of possibility. When you're looking for the minimum amount of possibility of haid, it is not 5. What is the minimum then?
1. But
1.
7, which is less than 13.
والله نشوف. We'll see. I'll look into it.
Another question. Is janazah salah prayed upon the miscarried fetus above 90 days?
If after 120 days, that is when the ruling of janazah comes for the fetus. The hadith of Abdillah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, 40 days, 40 days, 40 days, and then the soul is blown into him, and that's when it becomes a human. So that takes the ruling of a human. 120 days. خلاص كتاب الصلاة. طيب.
وقل رب زدني علما